The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, folks, or good morning, depending where you are. We're going to be starting our webinar here, our virtual chapter meeting, in a few minutes, so stand by. Good afternoon again, folks. We're going to start our meeting here in about 1 minute, so gather up your coffee or your beer, whatever you're lucky enough to have with you. We'll be back to you shortly. Okay, good afternoon, folks. We're going to start our first ever virtual chapter meeting today, and this is sort of a bit of an experiment to improve how we have our chapter activities and chapter lives. So we're going to have really three parts to today's meeting. The first, which I can show you, the first is talk about chapter organization. Then we're going to get into an update about the association itself and what we're doing. And then it wouldn't be a chapter meeting of any kind without a bit of a postal update, so we're going to have that as the closing act. So first thing today, let's talk a little bit about chapter organization, okay? As you know, the association has 12 chapters that are listed here in alphabetical order, and those cover the whole country. Here's how they're divided up, going from New England and the Southeast out to the West Coast, Northwest, and Pacific. So everybody who is a member of AMSP is a member of a chapter. And in some cases, those chapters are small geographically. Other cases, they're quite large. In some cases, they're relatively full of people. In other cases, they're not full of people. And that's part of the problem we have to work with, is the geography that in some cases is a problem, as well as the lack of density of members in any given area. If you look at the New York area, for example, there are a lot of members in the greater New York City area, and that enables them to do things that isn't possible, for example, if you have the geographic span of the Great Plains chapter, which is also one with relatively fewer members. So today we're going to talk primarily to the 7 chapters that are in bolder print there: Chesapeake, Great Lakes, Great Plains, Ohio Valley, Philadelphia, Rocky Mountain, and Southeast, because those are the ones where we seem to be the most heavily challenged by the number of members who are available, or the geography, or sometimes both. The New England and New York chapters benefit from the density of membership as well as some small geography. They're also relatively active. Northwest is a bigger territory, but they have active members as well. And the Southwest is probably one of the most active, having had their little annual meeting just last week. And they have a long tradition of working together and having a nice a member community down there. Pacific is another issue we have to work with, because they have problems with geography, but we'll talk about that with them privately. So today, I wanted to go over a couple of things that we need to work on. As you know, any successful chapter needs leadership. It needs participation by the members in that area, and needs activity, things going on. So many of the chapters that are the subject of today's call don't have leadership, or if they do, they don't have a lot of participation by members, or if they have that, they have a hard time getting activities pulled together. So today's meeting is to develop leadership in those places, to work on participation, and to figure out forms of activity that can make those chapters more viable. So the to-do list, okay, leadership. We've got to figure out people who will lead each of those chapters. Now, for some that are on today's call, we do have leaders. In many cases, we had a leader. We don't have the usual contingent of president and treasurer, secretary, or what have you. So in all cases, we need to work on either finding individuals to lead a chapter, or giving the current people who are at the head of the line the type of support and assistance that they need to have. So that goes on to the next thing, participation. How do we get the people in the chapter area to become more engaged, to actually want to spend the time, whether it's a couple of hours in the evening or a couple hours in the morning or at lunch, to go to a chapter activity, a chapter event. Now today, of course, as you can see, we're trying out something new. We're trying out a meeting that requires you to go no further than your conference room. In that situation, there really is no excuse for being 50 or 250 miles away from where the meeting is being held, because it's being held at your conference table. It's being held on your computer. So that's something we may want to talk about later on today. And the last thing is activity. Figuring things that the chapter can do, whether it sponsors it, whether it's a content delivered by somebody else, the things that the people in that chapter area will agree to do to make the chapter viable and active. So just to be fair, what we can support, of course, what we can provide from this end is logistics. We don't expect chapters to have to go out and find their own places, but if they do, we will help in any way that the chapter wants us to help to coordinate with a venue of any sort, whether it's a member's facility or whether it's a restaurant or something else. We do need to acknowledge that there is a limitation imposed by our board on how much money can be spent on chapter meetings. The chapters have been so minimally successful that they have not been well underwritten by the board. So any chapter meeting, we really encourage you to find a place that is zero cost, that is free. You can't fight free. So in that regard, if you can find a member facility, a member's conference room or something where there is enough space to have 10, 20 people get together and have a presentation, that would be ideal. In that situation, the registration fees that are usually associated with a chapter meeting, which are relatively minor, they're $20 or something like that, $25. Those would go to cover the cost of whatever facilities may be needed, and of course the cost of any food that may be brought in for the folks to enjoy at lunch or dinner. But again, with that in mind, we can provide all the support you need from this side in figuring out, where to go, how to arrange your food and beverage and so forth. Again, it's not something which we insist on doing. It's a matter where we offer the local chapter the benefit of our assistance if they want it. But if they want to do their own thing, then heaven knows they can certainly do it. Similarly, marketing is something which we're doing from this end. We can provide the printed and mail type of marketing. We can provide information on our website. We can provide information through email blasts and so forth to promote the meeting. That's something which probably we can do better because of just the facilities that we have here. But again, is what you want and how we can help. And lastly is content. Chapters, of course, have to have a purpose to come together besides just, everybody standing around and talking. Networking is important. It is a valuable benefit of membership. And we certainly encourage that. But after everybody stands around and visits for a while and, has a glass of wine or a bottle of beer or whatever, they want to have some meat to discuss. And in that regard, we can work with the chapter leadership to figure out what they'd like to have for a program. Obviously, sometimes it comes out of headquarters. We can, I'll go out and speak to to folks on postal issues. Ken goes out and talks about business issues. We have other folks in our resource bucket who can be used to offer presentations and support to chapters. But the content is something which has to come up from the chapter. But we can certainly provide whatever they'd like to have in that regard. So what you need to do then is figure out who is the person who's going to lead the charge, who's going to run the show at the field level, at the chapter level. Figure out where you want to have your event, if you want to have an in-person meeting, and figure out what the format of your meeting is going to be. You're going to have food, you're going to have no food, you're going to have wine and beer, you're going to have no drinks, you're going to have a program before or after, you're going to have a drawing, you're going to have whatever. Based upon the chapter members' interest, that is what we would support to the extent the chapter wants us to support them. Okay, so step one. What we have to have every chapter on the call today do is identify a leader, identify a chapter president. And if they have enough support, identify a chapter board, people who will help the president do his or her job of leading the chapter. And I would like to have each of the chapters send me, after they've discussed this, who is going to be that person or persons, who is going to be the chapter leadership. We also would like to have the chapter figure out what they want. Plan your meeting to the extent of saying we're going to have it at so-and-so's plant, so-and-so's conference room. We want to have this type of format, and we want to have this type of content. And then once that's done, to the extent the chapter wants us to help in doing things, we will do that. We will provide them that kind of support. So figure out amongst yourselves, talk amongst yourselves here, figure out who you're going to have as your chapter leadership, and send that to me at AMSP headquarters by email or whatever you want to do. And then let me know what your plans are for future meetings. One thing we need to keep in mind, I think, all of us on the call today, especially in those chapters that are geographically challenged, shall we say, is whether or not we want to focus primarily on virtual meetings like this or on in-person meetings. Again, I've been to chapter meetings in every chapter in the country, and in some cases it's more successful than others. And it's always been a matter of two things. One is the activity, the level of engagement of the chapter members and the chapter leadership, and the simple limitations that chapter faces in terms of geography and the number of members they've got. If you're a chapter with 30 members strewn over many states, it's hard to pull them together in person. I understand that. We don't expect you to go out of your way and spend $1,000 to go to a chapter meeting. On the other hand, we need to figure out a way to replace that kind of in-person meeting with something that's just as suitable and provides the members the type of support, type of engagement they deserve to have, because they are paying their dues, and they deserve to have that. Otherwise, they won't know what they're getting for their money. So, anyway, that's the part of the chapter of the program that talks about the chapter organization. I encourage all of you to talk to each other in each chapter and figure out who's got the ball, who's going to do this, because it's not going to help anybody if we don't get the chapters, many of these chapters, brought back to life so that they can provide the type of benefits to members that our members deserve. So to go on now to an update on what's going on in the association, there are some staffing changes, as you may know about. I just want to go over those. Michelle Raymond is now the Director of Marketing. And Michelle has brought a level of engagement and activity and intensity to this that is really refreshing. And I think you've seen it already in the improved marketing, messaging, and the greater visibility the association has and the association's activities have. She's worked very closely with Brittany Brown, who was the Assistant Director of Marketing and Communications. And the two of them together are a very dynamic pair, and the results, I think, are ever more obvious as we continue to go through one situation to the next, one different program. Our conferences, our webinars, and so forth are getting the kind of visibility they deserve. Tyler, who has been in the association now, I think, longer than all the rest of us put together, is the person who is probably most closely associated with AMSP. And he's been given the job of Director of Member Satisfaction and Retention. Members reach out to him for everything. He's their go-to guy, and he is outstanding in providing member support, keeping members happy, and hopefully keeping them as members. In difficult times, sometimes all of you have to make choices between paying dues or other costs, and I think Tyler is one of the reasons why you come back year after year, and we're going to hopefully retain him until he's even older than he already is. So the last new addition here is John Raffner, who is now in charge of membership growth. As you probably recall, John was the owner of a company. He owned Nice Lines outside Philadelphia. And he sold that and worked for the company that bought him for a while. Then he went on to work for EFI. And during the time when he had his company, he was on our board of directors and was the chairman of the board, as a matter of fact, back a few years ago, and led the association through some rather difficult times. But John has come now to work for us to help drive membership. As you know, it's been something which has not been given the focus that it could have been given because there weren't enough hands to do it. So John has a strong knowledge of the sales cycle, sales process. He has obviously a great knowledge of the industry and the business, and knows how to deal with prospects and joining them and getting them to join the association. So we have great hopes for that. Other things that are going on here, of course, the transition is just about finished. We have completed our rebranding. As you can see on the slide there, we have our new logo and name and all that kind of thing. People continue to struggle how to pronounce it. They just learned how to say MIFSA, and now we have to learn how to say AMSP. People will do what they have to do. But that's one thing that's done. Our publications have been rebranded. Our website has been totally redone, and that is now much better than it used to be. And, of course, the association itself moved at the same time to new quarters about 2 blocks from where we used to be. And now we are in our nice new offices with our nice new brand, pardon me, and we're across the street from the King Street Metro here in Alexandria. So if any of you are ever in the D.C. area, we are three stops from National Airport. So it's not that far away. It's a quick ride, so stop in and see us. Education, of course, as you know, we're continuing to offer the Knowledge Network series. The next ones are posted on our website. The Postal Point webinar series is an ongoing series of reviews of what's going on as reported in Postal Points, and that follows every issue by about a week. So every 3 weeks we'll have one of those webinars. And we have our conferences. We have the annual coming up in June in San Diego, and the midwinter has just been settled to be in early February in Phoenix, or Scottsdale, I think actually is where it is. So those are two things that we encourage members to participate in. Member services, we have accreditation programs. 2 of the 3 are familiar to you for fulfillment and sustainability. We are in the process now of completing the ramp up to a mailing service provider accreditation. That is being spearheaded by our good friend and colleague George Heinrich. George is working to get the beta testing completed and have something ready to roll out very shortly. That will be something which, pardon me, which enables our members to have a professional accreditation that they can use in promoting themselves to clients and show that they have met certain standards that were set by an industry or trade association. Something else that's very important here is something that has just started to be rolled out here called My Mail Connection. Now, My Mail Connection is not the Postal Service's program. If you recall, a year or 2 ago, they had something called Mailers Hub, and that was something that they try to manage in conjunction with a third-party provider. And in that case, you had to pay to play. You had to pay to have yourself visible. In this case, we're working with Interlink One to help build a site which allows you to be visible on there. It's a subscription service. You can participate in this and make yourself visible to anybody who wants to find you and your services. This little brochure here was in the last issue of Postal Points. It is something which we are encouraging our members to sign up for because it is, first of all, a valuable service that gets them visibility. It's going to get them a lot of access to potential customers. The Postal Service is going to connect to this. So when they have promotions and they begin to talk about finding mailing service providers in the area served by any given area of interest by a client, they will direct people to this, and then customers or clients, that is your potential customers, can go to this and see who's available, see what those available companies can do, and probably generate some business for you. So as I said, we encourage all of our members to support this because it's for their own good. Okay, what else is going on? Of course, the usual things are going on here. We offer consultancies in postal issues or HR. We do advocacy, of course. Ken was on the Hill just yesterday speaking to a subcommittee of Congress, and we work with postal headquarters all the time. And we have our mainstream publications, Postal Points and Postscripts. So that gives you an idea of what's going on and what's new and what's different back here at MFSA. Here I go, at AMSP Universal Headquarters. So now let's just spend a few minutes on the usual issues of the Postal Service. This picture up here shows you some volume and revenue trends, expense trends, going back about 5-6 years. And as you can see, the red line that is expenses has not been going down as fast as the yellow line, which is revenue, and of course the blue bars that are volume. And that's the problem. The Postal Service, for whatever reason, has not been able to reduce its costs to bring them down as fast as its volume, and revenue has been dropping. So that's the basic problem we're facing. Obviously, this decrease in volume has hurt the industry too. I don't need to tell you that. There are people who are not in the call today because they're going out of business. So what hit the industry has hit the Postal Service, but I think the Postal Service is probably less able to deal with it than the companies within our industry. This gives you a picture of how things have changed over the course of 7 years and how much volume has been lost. About 30% of volume has been lost in 7 years. And revenue has gone down almost 25%, even though you've had a succession of rate increases that have totaled over 34%. So all the trend lines here indicate a very serious situation, a very serious challenge facing the Postal Service. 2013, the data you can see on the screen there are what the Postal Service expected to have for its results during this fiscal year. And so far this year, we have gotten the results that show there through February. The governors met this week and reviewed the second quarter financials. They're not out yet. They may come out today or tomorrow. And when they do, they'll be reported in Postal Point. What you can see right now is that things are kind of where they're supposed to be. That is, the Postal Service's probably rather pessimistic plan has been beat so far, which is good. They've kept expenses relatively low, and they've had a little bit more revenue than they expected. However, you can see that the first-class mail volume is still down, still off over 4%. And the standard mail figure is one which you shouldn't take too much to the bank just yet, because standard mail benefited quite a bit from the mailing activity surrounding the elections last fall. October was part of this fiscal year, and a huge spike in standard mail pushed up, kind of skewed the curve a little bit. So we'll see before the year ends up how much that upward swing holds true. Okay, cost reductions. The Postal Service wanted to reduce their delivery days. They have a modified delivery schedule in August. They wanted to cut it from 6 to 5 days from those things except packages. Congress pitched a fit, mostly because the Postal Service didn't genuflect at their altar first before asking permission. And that got everybody up in the hill in a snit, except for Congressman Issa and Senator Coburn, who thought it was a great idea. So the political firestorm finally came back on the governors, and yesterday the governors blinked. They chickened out, and they left Pat Donahoe sitting on a limb while they reversed direction and pulled the rug out from under him on this otherwise rather important element of their cost reduction process. That leaves them with a few other things they have to work on. Of course, they're still doing their retail optimization activity, their post plan, which itself is getting criticized because it means small post offices either being closed or more likely having their retail hours cut from 8 hours a day to 6 or 4 or 2. And there's the usual whining and gnashing of teeth that results in that. So, but at the same time, the Postal Service is trying to make itself more accessible through village post offices or kiosks or whatever. So we'll see how this plays out. But right now, the post plan is continuing, and every so often I'll give an update in Postal Points as to how many offices have been affected. The service standard changes that started last year, we won't see the second phase until February of next year, but at this point, the associated plant closures are ahead of schedule. The plan was to cut the total number of plants by about half, down to about 220. And as you can see there, they got about 48 done last summer before the elections in the fall mailing season. They've moved a lot of facilities that were on next year's list up to this year's list. So right now it stands at 144 plants that are going to have some level of closure or consolidation by the end of the summer, by the end of the spring, with a total complement reduction of about 28,000. That's 28,000 positions being eliminated. The exigent case. This case, of course, was filed about 3 years ago now, and it is not officially dead because it was sent back to the PRC after going around and around. The ball is in the Postal Service's court, and Pat Donahoe has said he's not going to raise prices through an exigent case unless he is ordered to do so, such as by Congress. So unless that happens, of course, the case is sort of on the side. In all practical matters, the data that supported that case is out of date, so that particular case may not be resurrected. However, if you read the press release yesterday from the Board of Governors, they were talking about considering an exigent case again because the Saturday delivery issue was reversed. So whether we see another exigent case or not, we have to kind of wait and find out. Meanwhile, there will be another rate case this year, of course. In the fall, we're going to have a filing of some sort to describe what's going on. In January of 2014, the ones you can see here that are underwater are going to be the focus of some interest, and we're going to have an increase in standard mail flats of 5 points over the otherwise applicable CPI for the next 3 years. That was a commitment made by the Postal Service to the Postal Regulatory Commission after the PRC complained about the rates being underwater. Before I get too far here, there's a question came in from one of our listeners about plant closures. If a plant is listed as closed for originating mail, but not destinating mail, does that mean there will be no more mail acceptance at that facility? What we have been told consistently is that any acceptance units that are in place at a plant will stay there. There are no, if the building's being closed, of course, they may move it someplace close by. But in those places that are being consolidated but turned to other purposes, such as being carrier stations or whatever, the B&AUs are not going to be pulled out of there. So for the time being, I think the answer to the question is generally there will continue to be mail acceptance at those facilities that are having any kind of closure. The destinating mail that the question refers to is the mail that is coming into the area. The originating mail is collection mail. But what that means is in usual situations, you're going to have one operation or the other moved out. In most cases, both operations are moved out. But in some situations, you're going to have an asymmetrical mail flow so that a given geographic area, the originating mail goes one place and then the destinating mail goes someplace else. Another question we have here about the percent the USPS committed to correcting underwater products. In the, what document was it? I forget now which document it was. But the Postal Service, as part of the annual compliance review, or as part of the exchange they had with the PRC over underwater rates, and the PRC's instruction, they have to figure out a way to solve these. The Postal Service committed to raising the prices for standard mail flats, and I guess standard mail parcels to the extent they're not in competitive products, to raise those rates by 5 points over the otherwise applicable CPI cap for the next 3 rate cases. We're not talking about nonprofit rates in general. We're not talking about periodicals or bound printed matter. We're talking specifically about standard mail flats and, to the extent they're part of that party, standard mail parcels. So if the rate increases fall, the CPI is capped at 1.5%, and then they'd be going at 6.5%. This chart here goes to that issue of what's the cap going to be. I don't know. The CPI cap, the CPI figures for March are going to come out in about a week. And at that time, the calculation will show a new cap over the prior 12 months, and that may well be lower. And as you can see the curve here, so it's got a little bit of a flattening motion going. It's going to keep going downhill in all likelihood for the next few months. So at the end of the year, by the time the next case is filed, it may be in the 1.5% range. Who knows? But right now, it's under 2% and it seems to be going in that direction. What's Congress doing? Well, it depends if you consider doing anything helpful or just doing things. Right now, their biggest activity involving the Postal Service is passing post office naming bills. Otherwise, there is nothing going on that is useful. The closest thing we have coming to a bill, I believe, is something that Senator Carper is talking about getting filed within the next few weeks. But that is it so far. Nobody else has filed anything comprehensive. There have been some bills that have been filed by the special interest things to preserve the Postal Service, as they say, essentially by compelling them to continue 6-day delivery, stop them from closing post offices, or other things that are really supported by the union as nothing more than job preservation initiatives. So, other hot topics, of course, hopefully by now the dust has settled on self-mailers. Everybody is up to speed on that. If not, we sent out the revised charts the Postal Service supplied in the last issue of Postal Points. So hopefully that's going to be helpful for folks in sorting through what's going on. IMB, as you know, we are in the year between the transition from PostNet to IMB and the date next January when full service is going to be required in order to qualify for automation rates. So hopefully, whether we like it or not, everyone is at least getting ready for that and moving in the direction of having themselves prepared. Coil stamps, after a lot of conversation with the Postal Service, they finally came out with a policy that enables members to get coil stamps more easily, really bulk quantities of stamps in any format. And that also was in a recent issue of Postal Points, letting you know what the latest and greatest thing is there. Residual first class rate, that goes back a couple of months really, and now the first class rate of the price for the residual pieces in a first class pre-sort mailing, the price is 48 cents for pieces up to 2 ounces. There was a lot of controversy as to what price it would be and how it would apply, and that has been settled. By 4, we are still awaiting a document from the Postal Service explaining their position on By 4. We've offered them plenty of input. We hope to get something from them shortly, but we've been waiting for them to give us something shortly for a month. So we'll see what happens. Last thing there is MDAs. There was a lot of concern over accessibility to MDAs during the folded self-mailer flap. Hopefully that's died down a little bit, and now we will see a little bit better performance in that group. Question here. Let's see, if anybody is using the new stamp procedure, if it's working okay, we can probably send out as part of one of our MTAC, our pre-MTAC surveys, if not now, next time, asking about whether anyone is using the new stamp procedures and how they're working. We'll have to do that. Have I heard anything about revisions to the folded self-mailer rules? We've been told to expect revisions as soon as this week. Well, you're ahead of me on that one. I hear pretty consistently that the folded self-mailer rules, being the product of a lot of development time and a lot of back and forth, were not about to be changed soon. So if there is something you've heard and it's a reliable source, I'd be happy to look into it further. But as it is, I haven't heard anything about that at all. By 4 refers to, as someone asked about that, By 4 is the shorthand reference to the 3 boxes on the top of a postage statement where you identify the holder of the permit, the person or the party preparing the mailing, and the party for whom the mailing is being prepared. And there was a lot of concern when, after the EDDM product was introduced, that the Postal Service was looking at this information and using it to go knock on customers' doors and try to sell them on things, which in some cases resulted in diverting that client away from what they were doing with a member company. So By 4 is a statement we're looking for from the Postal Service that would describe its position on how it's going to use or not use the information shown on postage statements as part of its marketing activities. So that answers that question. So I think the message today is the postal issue, stay informed. There's a lot of stuff coming down, whether it's prices or rules, PRC activities or activity in Congress, what's happening in technology. The most important thing is you have to stay involved and pay attention. And of course, here's where you can contact me. I guess you know that. You've been asking questions all along. If you have any more, you can email me separately or write something in your dialogue box today. But recalling what we discussed earlier in the program, please pay attention to doing things to help the chapter, your chapter, become more active and a little more viable. We've got the majority of our chapters not doing that well, having very little activity, and that is not good for either the members in that area or the association as a whole. So please do what needs to be done to take care of that, and let me know who will be representing these different chapters and how we can support them in getting themselves back to business. My eagle-eyed assistant here, Michelle, just pointed out that my little fake business card is the wrong suite number. 320 is where we really are. I don't know who's in 310, but they'll get my mail if you'd like to be there. So, notwithstanding that little faux pas on my part, if there are any, I don't see any more questions. I don't think nothing else coming in here. So, with your assignments in hand, I thank you for calling in today. I'd like to talk to you next Monday at our Postal Points webinar. And until that time, oh, I have a question here. How do we know who's in our chapter? Okay, the chapters are set up by geography. The chapter, I believe it's on the home page where the chapters are, what the geography is. We can send out a list of chapter members to identified chapter leaders to help them contact people in their territories. That'll be the easiest thing. Otherwise, it's a matter of getting things out of our database. So if we have somebody from, name a chapter, Philadelphia chapter, who wants to know who's in southern New Jersey and Pennsylvania, we can send out that list once we have a person identified to receive and handle it. So, okay, that's it. I think looking one more time, what Michelle is saying, one more thing here. Do we have anybody else's hand raised over here? I don't think so. I think we're good. So, Oh, there's a question. Oh, here we go. Would it be possible to set up a date and time for chapter members to meet virtually and try to establish leadership? Yes, definitely. We can set up a virtual meeting for any individual chapter. Just contact me, contact Tyler or Michelle. Any of us will be happy that we work together on this. And we will both set up the meeting for you, and we'll identify members, and we'll email you the free drinks, whatever you need to have. It's tough faxing a beer. We'll work at it. But we'll do whatever we can do to help get the chapters going again. Okay, so now, is that a question? Is that it? Yes, I think it is it. We love drink tickets, as I know you do. Okay, thank you folks for calling in today. Look forward to working with you again and talking to you soon. Take care.